Welcome, everyone. My name is Wendy Close, and I'm a Vice President of Apttus, and I will be your moderator and your facilitator for the next 2 days in the Quote to Cash Masters track. We're delighted to have you join us, and I'm going to kick it off with our first session. I'm going to introduce Kingman Tang on my team. He's with Apttus. He's a Senior Director, and he's going to introduce our first speaker. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Wendy. And thank you, everyone, for joining the best 11 o'clock session. Yeah? All right, so Kevin Louie here is with Twilio, and if you were at the keynote, you obviously saw that he got an Innovation Award for working with Apttus and just some of the innovative stuff that they do. So today, what we're going to talk a little bit more about is what is this thing called Conversations? And obviously, the undertone is there's Max as our product. And I think one of the things that I was telling Kevin was, the whole rationale for this session is that we know sort of chatbots or intelligent agents or virtual assistants in our consumer lives, right? Who here has an Alexa? No one? Okay. So we all know that. But how about in the B2B space, in our business lives? Maybe not so much, right? So what's awesome is that Kevin and Twilio embrace that, and we want to share their story. So I'm going to let Kevin take it away.
Awesome, great. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Great. I want to do a really quick introduction about myself. I run the sales systems team over at Twilio. That involves the sales stack, Apttus, Salesforce, LinkedIn, and every tool we have to have in play to make sure our sales reps are successful in the field. Really quick overview of Twilio. We were founded in 2008, and since then we've grown to over 650 employees. Conversations are really near and dear to our heart because we believe that contextual conversations can actually shape the entire way we engage with businesses and even each other. And so that's also a leading reason why Max stood out to me, because it actually really resonated with what we believed in terms of how communications looks like in the future. A really quick agenda today. I'm going to do a really quick overview of our quote to cash journey. What has worked really well for us. Hopefully those could serve as some nuggets for you guys who are looking to implement something that's a quote to cash solution. Some early challenges and solutions that we're currently kind of exploring and running into. We'll then hand it over to Kingman to talk a little bit more about what Max is, to just give you an overview. And then from there, we'll do a deep dive into where Max is at Twilio today and where we think Max is going to be in the future. So in our quote to cash journey, we went with a very quick implementation of our CLM instance. And by quick, I mean after we signed the SOW, or we signed the order form, we went live with CLM 2 months later, right? And we were able to do this by having a very strongly defined MVP of what we actually wanted to get out the gate. We didn't want to bog ourselves down with too many complex things. And so we rolled out the NDA and the MSA, which are more of our straightforward contract processes. And we also had 100% adoption because we also had the buy-in from legal who said, yes, as of February 1st, we will no longer accept any contract through email. It must be through Apttus. And that's actually worked really well for us. So we never really had adoption challenges there. Usability challenges, along the way, but that was always a learning process for us. The second thing that's worked really well for us is we've grabbed a lot of external processes, right? Complex processes that lived in Google Forms, that lived in Confluence pages, that lived in emails, and moved them all into a core platform. And so as legal and finance got more comfortable using Salesforce and Apttus. And so for our reps, that means they had one centralized location. And lastly, the third major milestone we had is we completely automated our hardest contract type, which is our order form. Especially since we're selling telecom, there are a lot of clauses, a lot of nuanced products, offerings that we have to add in. We took all the learns that we had from our February go live up to August and figured out how to roll out something that's workable come the order form automation. And so, some benefits that gave us was it actually helped us. This is quoted by a rep when we went live in August. It actually cut the time in half to do some order forms. And so that was actually really cool. So right after that point, we were all a believer in that a quote-to-cash solution would actually help Twilio in the long run. But despite that, we still ran into some challenges, right? The first challenge was a usability challenge. It took too many clicks and too many manual steps to add too many products, right? And so when you think about a product at Twilio, If you were to send an outbound message, well, we have a SKU for every single carrier that you're sending it through, right? And so that compounds itself with countries. So France will have maybe 13 line items for every carrier in France. And so we found that there was too many clicks. And so to build a solution, because Apttus was based on our Force.com platform, we were able to leverage a lot of institutional Salesforce knowledge, a lot of institutional consulting resources to build a custom solution that embedded right into our document generation tool with Apttus, right into our DocuSign integration with Apttus. And so that actually worked out really well. And that's still an ongoing process we do today. There are 3 other major challenges that we couldn't easily address. And the first one is training, right? Anecdotally, today, it takes a really long time for a new hired rep to complete an error-free contract. We've seen instances in which it takes about 8 to 12 weeks for someone to finally understand how to do a contract at Twilio, how to submit all those line items for every single carrier for a given country. And so it's a challenge we run into today. The other challenge we run into is, as we're trying to scale our revenue at such an incredibly rapid rate, we have a limited number of reps who have to be able to churn through deals and churn through contracts more quickly. And today, we are going to hire a lot more reps, but reps still have the challenge of trying to manage their time and spend less time doing contracts. And the last challenge we have is headcount growth. So in the latter half of this year, we're going to hire a number of more reps over at Twilio. And today, if you ask our legal and our finance team and our sales ops team, we're already trying to stay above water, right, with the reps that we have on hand, let alone almost double the number of reps that are coming in. How do we still be able to support these new hire reps with our limited number of support resources and operational resources at Twilio? And so these 3 challenges are actually pretty hard to take on, but that's actually what makes me really excited for Apttus Max. And so before I go into how we made the business case to invest in Max, I'm going to hand it off to Kingman, who's going to give an overview of what Max is, what Max does, and then we'll go from there and right into a demo.
So I'm going to let you read this quote, but I'm going to ask a question. So how many of you guys have taken software training in general, whether it's Salesforce or Microsoft? Most of us, right? And what did we learn in that training? Shortcuts, where we could find how to do something in 3 tabs over or a couple flows down, right? So basically, this is a little nerdy, this quote, I admit, but this quote from Gartner that talks about how conversational systems, when we interact with our regular systems, we have to be technology literate. We have to go to training. But what if we turn that paradigm around and say, the system will react to how we naturally interact with a computer or how we interact with a person? So when you look at business apps today, it was built to be bulletproof, right? It's complex, it's inflexible, and there's reasons for it to be that way. But they're non-intuitive. They weren't built for us humans, mere mortals, if you will. And more today, we're interacting in the social, mobile, collaborative, and dare I say even conversational world. So what can we do to address and marry the 2 worlds? So Max is a virtual assistant that uses a conversational interface where you might previously interact with your computer system with a browser. Now you can interact with Max, and Kevin will show a demo in which they use Slack to have a conversation to get an NDA created. So naturally aligned with how you, the user, whether it's your selling day or your contracting day, how you get work. So there's no more sort of tabbing and clicking and scrolling all over the place to look for something. Just having a conversation with Max is the way you're going to interact. And when we think about Max having 3 core competencies: assist, guide, and coach. So assist is this notion of, I know exactly what I need to get done, I just need someone to help me get it done faster. So I'm going to give her a command to go ahead and get something done for me. Guide. Kevin will show a little bit about Guide, especially when it comes to the whole contracting process. So many of us are going through training to figure out the step-by-step that we need to go through for a process, right? But what if that process changed in midstream? What if you haven't remembered your training from 6 months ago because you never had to do a contract, let's say, you forgot it. So Max is here to guide you, much like a wizard, would lead you down a certain path, a prescriptive path that is within defined company policies. Coach. So coach is this notion of being able to get a recommendation or to tell me what the next best steps I should be taking. And what does that look like in the quote-to-cash realm? So here are just some of the examples. And I'm not going to belabor it. You could read some of the points here, but I think what's going to cement it for you is when you look at what Kevin has to show in terms of the demo itself. So I'm going to turn that back over to you.
Thanks. And so the next slide here is how did we make the business case for investing in a virtual assistant? And so it really, I was talking to our director of sales ops, and he was saying, well, we could get into a whole conversation about bots and how they're the future, maybe not. But really, it boiled up to the challenges that we're facing. No matter what training strategy we tried, no matter the frequency of training we did, the reality was that there was still a long ramp-up time for new hires to be proficient. And the reality was that as we're growing our revenue year over year, we're changing the way we operate as a company, and there's an evolving process. So even if someone understood our training process today, we may change it up on them, a quarter, 2 quarters down the road. And so it really became the fact that the process knowledge or the process gap between what you need to do and how the way you had to do it became a barrier to actually getting things done. And so my favorite quote is actually, "I need an assistant." This is actually from one of our top reps in Q3. It was, I think, the last Friday. He and I were both staying late. I was staying late for Salesforce-y things. He was staying late because he was working through contracts. And he said, "Kevin, what I really need is an assistant." And I think what he was trying to do was make me do his work for him. So I looked away and said, yeah, that's a great idea. I completely agree, but it doesn't make sense for us to hire an assistant for every single major outbound rep. And so I kind of tabled that thought out there, but I agreed, he was overwhelmed, but I did have a good solution for him. Some expected KPIs for how we're making a justification for Max is, what if we can reduce that ramp-up time from 8 to 12 weeks to something closer to 5 to 7 weeks, right? And what if we reduce the time they worked on contracts? Could they go outbound more? Could they actually spend more time in strategic deals, being more creative with how more creative and more competitive to win those key logos? And so, the last part, which I'm a big fan of, is how do we free up legal, finance, and sales ops' time for more strategic work and less administrative things, less basic questions, which we may have covered in the training 5 times over, right? But because of maybe they didn't do a contract in a while, they may have forgotten. Right? And so these were ultimately the biggest points that I think hit home for why we went forward with a virtual assistant. Now, today at Max, we have one use case built out, and we're building out subsequent use cases. But today we're going to go with the NDA. The NDA because just like how we went really quick with a live implementation in 2 months, of Apttus, the NDA is our simplest contract, but it's also the highest volume, right? So we're able to get a lot of user testing, a lot of user feedback, and make sure that Max is working well for us. It also solves key people challenges we're running into. One, which is, how do I get started with NDA? Where do I go to generate one, right? And not knowing what is needed, because maybe a page layout bombards you with 50 fields, which are all important, but may not be relevant for the rep that's trying to start an NDA. And then we'll go over some early outcomes after I do the demo. So if we can pivot over to a demo, I would love to show you what Max looks like today in our Twilio environment. Great. And so once Max goes live with many more use cases as well, we can see that Max can be the person or the Slack user they talk to actually help them get things done, right? And so when Max asks me what can Max do for me, I can say, well, I need an NDA. Right? So I actually start with an intent. I start with a problem that I'm looking to solve for, right? And from there, Max is great. I can help you with that. Is an NDA what you want? And I could say, sure, right? I could click the button yes. I could say yes. I can also reply with sure. And so there's Max, like as you would expect of an intelligent agent or Siri or Alexa. We understand that sure is like a positive response, right? It doesn't have to be yes. Maybe it'll take in German and French at some point. I don't know. But next thing it's going to ask me is like, what account needs the NDA? Well, I'm going to use my KL test account. And it's going to look for the accounts and group it by what it believes is actually the account I'm looking for. So I'll give it an agreement name, KL test NDA. Great. Does this look good? Yes, it looks great. And it looks like Max is telling me that there are 3 more fields I need to fill in. Now, if we showed you our Salesforce instance, you'd see many more fields than just 3 basic fields. I think you'd see maybe 20, 30, 40 fields. But Max is telling you that at a minimum, I think you just need to fill out 3 to do what you need to do, right? And so yeah, let's go forward with the 3 fields. All right, what's the account legal name? Well, I think I've always wanted a cafe, so we'll do Cluey Cafe, LLC. Let's always base it in Delaware. And as far as the entity type, we're going to choose LLC, right? And the reason why these are the 3 basic fields we ask for is because these are critical towards the document generation of the NDA. If these all look good to you, you can just reply yes. And like that, we actually have a Salesforce record that Max just created for us. So I can open this up now. And for security purposes, we haven't had Max create PDFs, but it totally can do PDFs, and that's something we're exploring as well. Create PDFs as an attachment to the Slack conversation. I can go here and click Generate on the Apttus agreement that I just created with all of you here. And so that's it for the demo, but I do want to highlight a few things that were pretty interesting that I think really highlight the promise of Max, which is, one, I think any of you could have done that. Right? Any of you could have had that conversation with Max. When I was showing my fiance last night as a dry run, I asked her, like, so what do you think? Like, do you feel like you can do an NDA at Twilio? And she said, yes, I do, and I need this for my HR compensation team. And I said, well, maybe I'll help you out with that, maybe not. But it was clear that it was valuable to even her, right? And so the idea here is that even she could do an NDA at Twilio, right? So if we were to hire those 50 plus reps in H2, we are hiring extremely competent reps. They know how to negotiate. They know how to engage with customers. They know how to do contracts. But what they may not know joining into Twilio at the gate is how to do contracts at Twilio, right? Or even how to do contracts at Twilio in Q2 of next year if we change up the process. And so what really excites me about Max is that through conversations, they can actually make sure they're doing the contracts the right way and error-free. If we can move back into the other slides. So if you guys embark on a Max journey or any other kind of systems journey in general, why did we start with the NDA? Well, we started with the NDA because it was simple and it was going to get used a lot. So it was one of those ideal low level of efforts, low complexity, but high impact, high usage. We were able to do a really quick proof of concept and show people what did really mean when we were looking to a virtual assistant, and what are how may this actually solve some of our training problems. And so key stakeholders actually quickly understood what the technology could do. They didn't really understand it as well when I was whiteboarding it and showing them and talking through it with them, but the demo helped even our contracts strategy manager, who's sitting in the back there. He kind of aptly called it the Alexa of contracts, right? I don't know if you can coin it that way, but the idea is that if we can bring that whole guided, intelligent bot experience to really complex flows like contracts and approvals and next steps, we could actually move through a lot quicker through working through deals and also training. And so where are we going with Max? Now that you've seen where we are today, we have a really quick but streamlined NDA flow. We really think that Max can help us through more complex things like redlining, right? Instead of sending emails back and forth and then finding your right agreement to attach it to, we think that Max can we can just throw an attachment at Max, and Max can help us figure out which ones, what to do next, which record to attach it to, who we should notify. We also want Max to take on more complex contract types, right? So someone on the road, right, who may not have the computer open could be on their phone and Slack Max and say, hey, can you get me a order form with a standard 25K commit with the EMEA and APAC products, right? Just so I can send to my customer for budgetary purposes, right? That's something that I think Max can do pretty well down the road. We also want to leverage Max's ability to parse out intent. So things like, instead of saying yes and sure, we can also figure out what you're really trying to tell Max to do. One thing we're trying to solve for is who to talk to who at Twilio. As Twilio is growing, we have a lot more people engaged on a given customer. You'll have a dedicated technical account manager, a relationship manager, a CSM, I think a dedicated support rep. And so when someone goes up to us and says, who's the business contact for this company, we want Max to actually parse out and say like, well, by business, what are you looking to do? Are you looking to pass a referral to us? Are you looking to sign up as a partner, right? Like, what does business mean? And then as Max can have that conversation and guide them through what they're looking for, that can actually help the entire company figure out which is the right person at Twilio that they should be talking to. And then lastly, even updating forecasts, right? Updating stale opportunities, these non-quote to cash things, but things that reps have to do on the daily basis. We think Max can also be extensible enough to explore those use cases as well. And so I think that's all I have for you guys today. I think we have about 5 minutes left. I think Wendy here is going to field questions if you guys have any.
So we have a couple minutes. Anybody have a question for Kevin of Twilio or Kingman of Apttus? Yeah.
Just a quick question on your NDA. Do you guys have integration with signing provider?
We do. And so today our NDA is integrated through DocuSign. Is that your question? Yeah.
DocuSign, that's why.
Oh, got it. Yeah, we currently use DocuSign today to help integrate our entire contracts flow. And so another use case we're also looking for is like, can you kick that NDA out to the customer, right? And then Max should ideally be able to generate that as well.
Are you planning to use Max for voice interface at some point, or is it going to always be via chat?
Right now, Slack is what's in our immediate periphery. We haven't had, as we roll this out to more reps, if that comes up, we'll explore it as well. We provide voice offerings, so it would be something that I'm pretty sure we could do. But right now, Slack is the key communication tool, and so we really wanted to target and make sure that we can do this right. And also the great thing about Slack is you don't have to worry about Slack hearing you incorrectly and then repeating yourself because you're actually typing. Yeah.
All right, well, if you have more questions for Kevin of Twilio or Kingman of Apttus, they're going to be moving over to the speaker area, which is right by the puppies. So you can follow them over there. And the next session is ABB telling their global story of their implementation of quote to cash. So let's give these guys a hand, and I hope you stay in here at ABB story next.
Actually, was going to say, if you guys want to see a demo, not the Twilio demo, but to see a Max demo, go over to the booth. And we can show you the updating an opportunity, taking a note. So this is in your CRM. We could show you how to do a quote via Max as well. So I invite you guys over to the demo area. Thank you.